This episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast is brought to you by Device Talks Tuesdays. Join us this Tuesday at 4 p.m. We'll hear from Naomi Murray of Stryker, who will be on the show a little bit later. Her presentation is brought to you by our friends at GE Additive and Foster. Please go to devicetalks.com to register. It's free, and you should be there. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Tom Salemi. Welcome back to the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. It is episode 50. We are turning 50. It's not exactly our birthday, perhaps, but it's pretty close. We actually put the first episode out the end of March last year. I don't have the exact date, but it is coming up. So whether we celebrate it 2 weeks or now, let's go with the big round 50. 50 is a great number. I enjoyed turning 50, and this podcast will enjoy it as well, despite some protests that are coming up. But it's a great celebration for you. It's a full house. We will have on the show today Naomi Murray of Stryker, who will be giving a presentation on additive manufacturing on our Device Talks Tuesdays program coming up. It's Tuesdays at 4 p.m. And I'm thrilled to have Ashley McEvoy. Ashley is the Executive Vice President, the Worldwide Chairman of Medical Devices at Johnson & Johnson. It's great to have her on the program. Big part of our celebration. Grateful for the time she took. We'll talk about many great things, including digital surgery. So I know you'll enjoy that conversation later on in the show. But now, let's not delay. Let's get this party started. Let's bring in my co-host, Chris Newmarker, the Executive Editor of Life Sciences at Mass Device. Hello, Chris Newmarker.
Good to be here, Tom.
Well, you know what today is, Chris. You know what you're turning today, right?
What's returning today?
What you're turning. We are turning 50 today. This is our 50th Device Talks Week.
I'm not turning 50.
50's great. 50's the new 40, Chris. Come on. 50 wasn't so bad. You can ask Sean Hooley's parents, who are roughly my age. 50's pretty good.
You're right. And medical technology is just getting better and better. I mean, it's great, man. It's great.
I am half robot.
Really?
Actually, yes, I've been. Most of It's a modern miracle. I'll write a first person for Mass Device.
It's amazing.
So to celebrate our 50th episode of the Device Talks Weekly, I sent the Zoom link out to the entire company, invited them all to come on the intro call to celebrate with us. So let's see how many people came to celebrate with us. It's Lisa Ital.
Well, we got Lisa.
Lisa's here.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
And she brought an onion dip. How nice of her. Thank you, Lisa.
Yay, woo!
Well, that's all we need to have a party. That's great. We can do a little karaoke later on, a little MedTech karaoke toward the end. This will be a good time. No, Lisa, actually, you're here for a legitimate purpose to talk about a webinar you're putting on later this month. Tell our faithful listeners who you are, first of all, and what you do at this amazing company.
I'm Lisa Ital, Executive Editor of Design World. In my day-to-day, I primarily focus on anything powered by an electric motor. So I write about motion control and power transmission for Design World. That's my beat. But I'm here today to talk to you about a third installment of our Women in Engineering. We're doing a new thing for 2021, our third webcast on March 31st at 2 p.m. Eastern. I will be serving as the MC for our Women in Engineering webcast. We have 3 panelists joining us, and we're going to chat about, I know, it's great. We're going to chat about what it's like to be an engineer in our industries. We have some amazing panelists. Our first, Anushay Askuwan, she's a super accomplished woman, environmental engineer who just so happens to be the CEO of a company called Ship and Shore Environmental. And this company makes pollution abatement equipment. So it's a very, very important work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially with the use of electronics just skyrocketing. So mostly her company serves the semiconductor industry. Another panelist we have actually is a returning customer. Her name is Lauren Wickert, and we profiled her actually with your medical design and outsourcing a couple of years ago. in the print version of the Women in Engineering series.
Oh, awesome.
Cool. I know. She was a biomedical engineer and did a little bit of a career switch. She's now still in engineering. She's a quality manager at a woman-owned company called Magadia Consulting.
Very cool.
So yeah, we're going to talk to her about what it's like to work at a women-owned business. Is it different than maybe other places where she's worked? We're also going to talk to her about what it's like to be a mom working at home as an engineer with 3 little ones in the house, what COVID has done to her day to day.
I'm sure Chris and she have a lot of stories to swap, right, Chris? What's it like to put out a mass device website with
I was just doing writing and editing with us having some little ones around the house, during points in the pandemic. But man, being an engineer, I mean, that's a whole other level.
That's real work. And you have a third panelist,
right.
Lisa?
I mean, I just get to talk to people and write things for a living.
That's right.
This is fun.
Lisa, I tell you, you're an actual engineer. Lisa actually has some skill and is able to convey things with deeper understanding than Chris or I. But and you have a third panelist, you said?
That's right. That's right. I admire you guys for distilling it down, which is a talent I lack. But yeah, our third panelist also just unbelievable. Megan Wax. She is a PhD electrical engineer, so not too shabby. She's on the West Coast and she's working as the VP of engineering at a semiconductor company. It's called Sci5, and this company designs chips for companies looking to leverage something called open source architecture. So this is for automation. She's going to explain what that actually means and her work and her leadership. And we're going to engage Anushay with questions to get her perspectives on leading an entire company, especially because her industry in particular is very male dominated. At the very end of this, I'll give you the link, but it's a very cool interactive webcast. At the end, all attendees, it is free, are encouraged to submit questions. We read the comments aloud. A lot of people share their own insights and their own experiences.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very fun. The website is designworldonline.com/WIE.
We'll put that in the show notes for sure.
I mean, it's such an important issue. I mean, before this pandemic, I mean, I know in the medtech space, when I go to big conferences, especially if they were engineering focused, I mean, it was a lot of guys, and I mean, I know it's definitely been improving, but there's just a long way to go.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, I could rattle off statistics. There's this sort of leaky pipe, they call it. So women who get degrees in engineering and then they eddy out for whatever reason. So there's some reasons and some theories about why that occurs. And we can touch on that March 31st. You guys should join. Yeah.
Hey, so, since like most of the things you write about are electric, my big question, Tom, is next time we have Lisa on, do you think we could use a little bit of the electric slide, or what do you think?
We could.
Can we license that?
Yeah, no, yeah, we license all of the music and sound effects we use here.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
We haven't up and sued into oblivion just yet, but there's still time.
Yeah, there's still time. I mean, we could.
Lisa, how did you become as I was joking earlier, you are actually an engineer, but how did you get into the writing side of things?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I put my resume on the internet in 2001 when I graduated from engineering from Cleveland State University.
You had to be an engineer to do that in 2001. Like, I didn't even know what the internet was. I think I was still using AOL at that point.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was floating in space on the internet. It was proof positive. Don't put anything on the internet that you don't want people to see, because I was found by what is no longer, but was Penton Publishing. And I could not believe it. Yeah. I mean, the fact that I work now as a technical writer, you guys know, it is super glamorous. We get to see things that are cutting edge.
It's cool stuff.
It's very cool.
But now you do so much more than writing. You have your own podcast, right? What's your podcast?
That's correct. It's Technology Tuesdays and the occasional Motion Mondays. And
love alliteration here at WTW. DeviceTalks Tuesdays. Copyright. Well, that's cool. Lisa, you're welcome to stay through Newmarkers, Newsmakers, or if you have actual work to do, we could bid you adieu.
All right. I'm going to scram out. We have the trends issue going to press. So,
Hey, well, fun as always. Talk to you around.
thanks you guys.
Bye.
Bye. All right. It's great to hear from Lisa Eitel. Once again, that webinar will take place at 2 p.m. on March 31st, Women in Engineering. It'll be a great conversation. I hope folks do register and join her there for what's an important talk. And it's one that we touch upon frequently here at Device Talks in medical design and outsourcing. And it's one we'll keep talking about in the future. Now we'll talk about
the Newmarkers Newsmakers.
That's right, Chris Newmarker. But before we hear the biggest stories of the week, aka Newmarkers Newsmakers, we're going to hear from Brandon Hoser, sales manager at Pack World USA. And then we'll have my interview with Naomi Murray. She's the director of Advanced Operations-Additive Technology at Stryker, and she'll be leading a conversation on Device Talks Tuesdays next week. Let's listen.
Last week, we spoke about toss heat sealing technology in Pack World machines. Beyond this technology, there are many other features available. Vacuum sealing is a common application, and our machines have a variety of settings which can help dial in recipes for specific packaging goals. Users can set the machine for vacuuming to a specific level or for a certain amount of time. Various pressures and flow rates are possible, along with vacuum purge cycling to maximize oxygen displacement. This versatile system can be used to vacuum tightly around product or set to remove only enough air for reduced packaging size while not damaging fragile contents. Our bag stretcher option pairs well with large bags or vacuuming applications. This feature uses grippers to hold the films at adjustable force, promoting a wrinkle-free sealing zone and reduced operator fatigue. Some applications require trimming films as they're heat sealed. A flying knife or special heat seal band that melts through material can be fitted to accomplish this. Options for user-specific security access and data logging exist. This enables compliance to 21 CFR Part 11 in your manufacturing process, which is more and more sought after for integration to quality management systems. Our standard machines are bar sealers, which make straight-line heat seals. Packworld does offer custom equipment for creating hermetic seals in contoured shapes. Some examples are sealing ports into bags, tray lids, or more complex shapes like the outline of a hand. Packworld heat sealers are generally used as manual machines with an operator loading and cycling the machine. However, our machines have been integrated to semi-automated and fully automated lines as well. TOS technology within a Packworld machine is scalable. So if a manufacturing process outgrows the speed for manual equipment, it can be integrated into high-speed automated lines. To find out more about Packworld heat sealers and discuss your application, please call us at 610-746-2765 or email info@packworldusa.com.
Naomi Murray, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, nice to be here.
It's great to have you, and it'd be great to have you on Device Talks Tuesdays next week. I want to talk about your discussion in a bit, but I want to get a little bit about your background. We always ask people how they get into medtech, and looking at your LinkedIn profile, it looks like you've been, I think you're the second one I've had on my podcast, a Stryker for life kind of person, right?
I have been, yeah. I went right from grad school into my first position in industry with Stryker.
Excellent. Well, talk a bit about your path into medtech. What did you study for a bachelor's, grad, and sort of did you know what was going to take you to where you are right now?
It's a good question. I'm going to say that when I applied for colleges, I was really interested in kind of the orthopedics industry. I remember writing my college essay, and I was like, I would think it would be really neat to make hip stems and things like that. So this was a long time ago, right?
No kidding.
And then I went to college, and I did choose a college that had a biomedical engineering degree. That was one of the things I was looking at. And then in the end, I get to college and I ended up deciding that I was more interested in something called material science and engineering. So I studied metallurgy. So I was really interested in metals and kind of the phases that the metals create and the different properties they have with different ways of processing them. And I sort of forgot about the biomedical side of it. I just really got into material science and engineering, which I know sounds a little crazy. And when I was finishing college, I had these moments. You have to kind of decide what you're going to do. Am I going to go get a job? Am I going to keep going to school? Am I going to go teach for a year? What is it I'm going to do? And I just kind of, at the time, I was like, I don't feel like I'm done learning from school. I know there's way more learning outside of school, but at the time I just felt not sure I'm done learning from school. So one of my professors that I was close to and I was working with, he suggested graduate school, and my dad had been a professor. So graduate school was a common thing for me in terms of it didn't surprise me that I would be interested, I guess, in graduate school. So I looked around at different material science and engineering schools, and I ended up going to Northwestern University, which is in Evanston, Illinois, based out of Chicago, and I stayed in material science and engineering. And when I got there, we had the opportunity to look around at what kind of positions were open. So what research topics were open. And one of the research topics that was open was about transformation superplasticity of titanium, which is a mouthful, but it basically, I used this property that titanium has to make porous titanium. And that kind of brought me back into the use of metallurgy in the biomedical industry. And I didn't do anything biomedical at the time, but I got to know titanium and I got to know porous titanium. And when I was finishing up in graduate school, I happened to meet or hear about Stryker. It happened to be in the part of the country that I was looking to be part of. And they needed someone who knew about titanium metallurgy and about porous titanium. It was like a perfect storm. So I started there, and I haven't had the need to look elsewhere since.
This was fated. It's amazing. So I would have guessed it was you had gone into materials, you really liked materials, and then you just happened to discover medtech. But it's interesting that you were sort of interested in medtech first and kind of accidentally found your best way back into medtech. It's really a fascinating path.
I didn't realize that until I was at Stryker for about 7 or 8 years. I kind of then remembered those essays. I can't remember why, but it came out. I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I didn't intentionally end up here, but it was fun.
That's great. Way to go, high school me. So what was your first job at Stryker? What were you capable of doing back then? And let's walk through sort of where we are to where we are now. Okay.
I started out as a research engineer in the R&D department for what is now Stryker's Joint Replacement Division. Went through a couple of different names. So it was based out of Mahwah, New Jersey, where I am still based out of. And I did start working on kind of manufacturing technology to make porous titanium. And so we were looking at making porous titanium, which was then trade named tritanium, using a different method than additive manufacturing. It's if I get all technical, it's a replication method. So you start out with a porous, like a foam, like your cushion, the seat of the cushion that you sit on, and you put titanium on top of it. You remove the foam, the polymer foam by some thermal treatments. You sinter the titanium on top of a forging, and you end up with a coating that has porous titanium on it. So it was very materials oriented. It was very titanium oriented, and it fit very porous titanium oriented. So it fit really well.
Great description. I'm a holder of a journalism degree, so I was able to follow you. So you described it perfectly for every person. So thank you for that. So when did additive manufacturing? Now here's where I'll reveal my ignorance. Additive manufacturing and 3D printing. I tend to interchange them, and I don't think they're the same thing. What's the difference?
I think they are kind of interchangeable. I think. There might be people who hold different opinions out there about that, but I think additive manufacturing tends to be maybe more the manufacturing focused word for it. I've found even geographically, some areas of the world like to call it 3D printing instead of additive manufacturing, and some seem to want to call it additive manufacturing. It's the same idea, where you're building something up 3-dimensionally and you're adding to it 3-dimensionally instead of subtractive manufacturing or casting where you're I guess pouring molten metal, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So it's a 3D printing would be a subset of additive manufacturing.
It could be. Other people would say the same thing. Yeah.
Well, 3D printing sounds cooler, so I'm going to keep using that one. So when did it become evident to you, or was it evident from the start that the path you were on was to 3D printing, or were you always on a 3D printing path? Because I'm uncertain as to when sort of 3D printing in orthopedics really became a thing.
Okay, so if I think back, and I even think about it from Stryker's perspective, right? So Stryker did start looking at additive manufacturing as early as 2001. Now that was some pretty early investigation, and I joined shortly after in 2002. And so it was probably and it was maybe a different group or slightly different team that was looking at it. And I would have become aware of what we were working on in additive manufacturing within, say, 6 months of starting at Stryker. And it was pretty early if you look at it from an industrialization perspective, right? So it equipment manufacturers, but a lot of the equipment was being sold and put into university labs. And that would have been where we started, with a university looking at what could you do with a laser? What could you do, with melting metal? A lot of people were trying to make dense metal, start out trying to, that's kind of where I think a lot of minds go. And originally, well, if I can melt it selectively, how can I make sure I can manufacture dense metal? And we were very much in the focusing on how could we make porous metal. And so I think there was a little bit of at least in my memory, there's a little bit of a shift in saying, hey, could we use this to make porous metal? And definitely, I remember prototypes and little cubes of metal coming across my desk in sometime in 2003, for example, and looking at what the mechanical properties of the material coming off the machine was. And I think those early days, it just wasn't quite ready. So it wasn't scalable yet. It was still sort of in these early, can I actually do it? And I guess if I extend your question, or if I think I understand where your question was going, it was probably close to 2010 or 2000, maybe 2009, 2010, when you kind of say, wait a minute, we believe we could actually make a product here with this technology. It's shown kind of that proof of concept, that feasibility phase. And it was around 2011 when we got that first production capable machine within a Stryker facility, and really went after that first product.
How cool was that day when you got the machine in house?
It was pretty neat. I have to admit, I was on leave, so I had just had my first child. So
and you had to choose between your first child?
My second child. Yeah. The first one, we had gotten our first prototyping equipment about the time I had my first kid, and then when I had my second one is when we had the production equipment come in. So maybe you don't need to use that in your podcast.
Oh, I don't know. I like those details. So tell me where you are now at Stryker. What are you doing there, and what is your additive manufacturing 3D printing operation look like? What are you capable of doing?
So right now I'm director of additive technology, focusing on kind of the long-term growth of additive manufacturing within Stryker. We have a team that spans across all of our divisions, so all of our different kind of areas that Stryker plays in, and looking at how we can leverage additive manufacturing technology, to really make healthcare better.
What is it that your operation? What do you 3D print? What do you manufacture? What do you do? What is made from your area for Stryker?
So right now we have manufacturing of devices. We manufacture our titanium technology using additive manufacturing. We started in orthopedics. We had our first product was our triathlon titanium tibial base plate, which was put on the market in 2014. And we have a few other that's for the knee, right? And so we have a few other parts of our knee system. We have triathlon titanium patella components, as well as some titanium cones that might be used in a revision space. If I stick with orthopedics, or I stick with our joint replacement, we have our Trident 2 titanium shell. Our 3D shell is made using additive manufacturing. We also have several products that are made using additive manufacturing in our spine space. So we have some titanium products in titanium products in interbody cages, and then also we have some products under the trade name of Cascadia that came alongside with our K2M integration a few years ago, and quite an extensive line there together through additive manufacturing there as well. We did a couple of years ago too, we did begin using additive manufacturing on our first patient-specific device. So in our cranial maxillofacial space, we have a product line, Facial ID, patient-specific plating, and we use our additive manufacturing technology there to make patient-specific plates for orthognatics, and that's our first foray into the patient-specific space. We kind of went about it slightly differently than some of the others in additive manufacturing and in the medical device industry, where we really focused on, could we make we call them serial implants? Could we make the same product time and time again? We didn't focus on that patient-specific side of it. We really wanted to be able to use it to make titanium and to have it out there and widely available for our customers.
Do you have just one 3D printing plant, or do you have multiple across the globe?
We're a global team. We have a global technology teams under the brand name Imagine, AMAGINE, Imagine.
my last question about 3D printing, and then I want to get into your conversation. Just what exactly I could see it for the customization, the custom implants, but more broadly, when you're building just a line of the same product, what are the benefits of doing it through 3D printing?
There's really a ton of benefits from design features that you can add. So you'll see in the Device Talks Tuesday, I have a lot of examples of what we're able to do with additive manufacturing in terms of the features that we can provide. For us, the beginning, titanium was a real need. We wanted to be able to put titanium on all sorts of different geometries. We wanted to be able to leverage, where the porous structure, where the titanium needed to be. It allows you to do things like embed, say, those dense features to give stiffness in places where you might want stiffness in an implant, but leave other parts of your implant to be more flexible, to have that porous area to grow into. In the spine case, you can have porous with some solid or dense features, and you can still then see features in X-rays. So you can actually tailor some of the properties by being clever about where you place different types of, different gradients of porosity versus dense material. So it really was about those features and benefits. Where can we add that titanium material? And then I will say there is a huge benefit just in general when you're doing a new product design. You can iterate really fast, and you can iterate with the same manufacturing technology. So if you're prototyping with other manufacturing technologies, it doesn't always turn out the same when you actually make it using the actual manufacturing technology. So kind of the neat thing about additive manufacturing is one of the neat things is you can iterate and prototype really fast using exactly the same technology you're going to be manufacturing with. So you get a true representation of what that product's going to look like.
Great point. And you were kind enough to bring up the Device Talks Tuesday, Sock. So what will you be telling people about on Tuesday? What are you presenting?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a history of Stryker and our additive manufacturing, which we talked a little bit about today. And then I do go into what types of products we already make, what are some of the reasons we went into it, what are those features that we can add to our products, where have we really leveraged the technology to meet our mission of making healthcare better. And then I have some of the discussion around some of the other tools that we use, some of the other design tools, like we have Stryker Orthopedics Modeling and Analytics Database. We call it SOMA, around designing the implant to bone shapes and density. And then, marrying that and tying that with our robotics system, that we can make implants and we can robotically implant them. It's changing both the way we manufacture and the way we implant, and really looking at how that affects healthcare.
Well, it's going to be a great conversation. Well, thank you so much for taking time today to share your story. It's great how you found your way into medtech, and I'm really grateful you'll be joining us next week on Device Talks Tuesdays.
Sure, it should be fun. I look forward to it.
All right. Well, thanks again, Naomi Murray, for joining us on the podcast, and thanks for leading a terrific conversation. It'll be held at 4 p.m. this Tuesday. Go to DeviceTalks.com to register. It's brought to you by our friends at GE Additive and Foster. Chris Newmarker, let's unroll the newsmakers. Chris,
are we ever going to do a sound effect, Tom? Or are we just done with that?
We did get away from that, didn't we? We did get away from that. Do you have a favorite of the ones we've done? Could it be Godzilla? Could it be the teletype machine?
I like Godzilla. Let's do Godzilla.
There it is. There's your sound effect.
All right, man. All right, here we go. So, number 4 on the list.
Whoa. You give me 5. None of this 4 stuff.
Number 5. That's right. We're
number 5.
Number 5 on the list. We've got Frequency Therapeutics. They've got a really cool drug that's delivered into the ear, and it's shown a promise to restore hearing loss in a small study. This is a really interesting company, Tom, because its roots has roots with Bob Langer at MIT. And Jeff Karp at Harvard, and we've actually written about this company a lot over the years, and it's kind of this neat strategy where they're delivering a drug that's supposed to activate cells inside your ear and get the inner ear hairs regrowing. So it's great that in a small study it showed promise, and hopefully we'll get more positive studies for this, because it's a really there's some really exciting potential around this company's drug. I mean, it could, I don't know about you, but I've been to enough rock shows in the past. It'd be nice to have something that could regrow some of the hairs inside my ear eventually.
Absolutely. No, and I know it's a space that it's interesting. We have seen a lot of efforts by device companies to move into the drug space. We talked about Medtronic doing that a bit, Renal Innovation, and this seems to be an area where you've got companies like Frequency, Decibel's another one that's backed by Third Rock Ventures and GlaxoSmithKline, where they're kind of moving into the area that was previously
hearing aids.
I guess they're devices. Yeah.
Yeah, there absolutely are. So yeah, it's
interesting crossover.
Yeah, it's I think we're moving into a period where everything is kind of like melding together a lot more. It's not strictly like medical devices, pharmaceuticals. I mean, we got pharmaceuticals being delivered with devices that are replacing pharmaceuticals. It's just really kind of a cool period. I think maybe we'll just be like life sciences tech eventually or whatever.
Yeah. Actually, it was interesting. I was preparing for the interview with Ashley McEvoy, checking out the Johnson & Johnson's analyst meeting from the fall on digital surgery, which was really good. And they talked about basically using the Monarch to deliver a drug directly onto a lung cancer nodule.
Wow.
So you're actually delivering a drug that way. So there's a lot of crossover. As much as we joke about robots and machines, it's definitely getting to be even more fun to cover this medtech industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the robot space is just super exciting, and hopefully, even though they cost money, an equalizer, because of the fact that you can only have so many like highly trained surgeons to do things. But if we can have robots that can kind of like level things out, I mean, that sounds great. I mean, I don't want to like worry. If I ever have the misfortune of being in a bad car accident, it's nice to know that, like, whatever hospital I go to, there'll be a certain level of expertise, basically.
No, that is a great point. And I think you're right. I think I know we need to go into number 4, but I do think the whole surgical robots are just marketing tools storyline has sailed. I don't think that's true anymore at all, if it ever was. But I think also the robots are delivering, not only making surgeons better at what they do, but also allowing them to do things they couldn't previously do. So
exactly,
we're not going back. And if you check out Johnson & Johnson's video, that the things that they're able to do and other robotic and digital surgery companies are able to do is really impressive. It really demonstrates their value.
And the fact that you got J&J and Medtronic weighing in to compete against Intuitive, I mean, there's just going to be more competition, hopefully, and we'll have a competitions that's going to like create even more innovation. So yeah, it's I'm excited to be writing about this for coming years. This is going to be very cool. So number 4 on the list, this is a little bit of bad news. We got Medtronic is going to have to face a federal lawsuit in West Virginia over its SynchroMed 2 pain pump. It's an infusion pump, and there've been a lot of troubles in the past with the SynchroMed 2, Medtronic even in 2019 agreed to create a settlement fund around it worth $35 million, and it just looks like we've got another this federal lawsuit in West Virginia brought by John David Brumfield is going to be moving forward. So a little bit of Medtronic will be engaging in a little bit of a federal court case in West Virginia, it looks like.
Well, it's an interesting piece of news. Well, let's go on to number 3.
Well, number 3 on the list, more legal news. We've got Elizabeth Holmes.
I heard of her.
Theranos founder. Yeah, we've heard of her. Have we talked about her before on here?
She might have been on the list once or twice, yes.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So the trial's being delayed again until late August.
Why?
In the past it's been delayed because of the pandemic, but the new reason is she's going to have a kid.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, she's going to have a child in July.
That's a pretty good reason.
The prosecutor said they were frustrated that they only learned about this in March.
No.
But his defense, her defense was saying that the trial was scheduled to start in July. It's a little hard to start a fraud trial for somebody when they're having a kid at the same time.
Okay.
So
interesting.
So they'll be delayed a little more. So and we'll see where this goes. I mean, definitely a lot of attention for the Theranos case. Subject of books, documentaries. I think there's even a movie coming out about this. Eventually.
Well, that'll be interesting to follow that story. All right, let's go on to number 2, Chris Newmarker.
Number 2 on the list, we've got GE Healthcare has launched a handheld ultrasound device, the Vscan Air wireless pocket-sized ultrasound device. I just like kind of like a very cool technology. So this is all kinds of potential around ultrasound. So it's just neat to see something that's just so mobile that could, hopefully, GE Healthcare was talking about how this could, increase both access and efficiency inside outside of a hospital. So just really interesting news around ultrasound.
Well, number 2 is the new number 1, or I forget about what's the number 1 item on New Markets Newsmakers, Chris?
Number 1, some more tough news. It looks like the star ankle, which Stryker previously made, FDA is now saying, warning of like a potential for a fracture of the plastic component in all of the star ankles. And this was actually a product that DGO acquired from Stryker in last November as part of like some of the divestitures Stryker was making before acquiring Wright Medical. So it just there'd already been some problems in the past, including Stryker issuing some warnings around some plastic fracture problems in 2019, but it looks like FDA is just like coming down at this point and just saying, there's a problem with fractures in all these devices, and that basically if somebody's considering getting one of them, they should discuss all the options. So just kind of basically looks like another we get failures in the industry. So that's looks like this is big news about something in the ortho space that appears to be problematic.
All right, well, it's unfortunate news. I remember that the star ankle had been around previously. I remember it was part of the Small Bone Innovations Company that really was one of the earlier pioneers in extremities. So it's too bad that they've got the news, but we're moving forward with other materials. So, all right, Chris. Great top 5 as always. Very informative. Some good news, some bad, but we tell it like it is here at
there
DeviceTalks
you go.
Weekly.
I mean, this week it was definitely more like mixed news. That's for sure. So.
All right. Well, now it's time for our closing keynote conversation. I couldn't be happier to have Ashley McEvoy, the Executive Vice President and Worldwide Chairman of Medical Devices at J&J, on the podcast. I sought her out as part of our big 50th celebration because, number 1, I enjoy talking with her. We've talked many times in the past when she was the head of the Vision Group, and I worked on an ophthalmology meeting. But more importantly, J&J has been underrepresented on this podcast, and they're doing so many cool things. I'll reference a video I watched from their November presentation. At least it was a fall presentation on digital surgery. You should definitely check it out. Lots of great stuff there. Lots going on. Great team for digital surgery. So very happy to have her here. Very happy to talk about J&J's impact on the pandemic. And I was quite surprised to learn that Ashley has not yet received a vaccine. She and the management team are waiting their turn. So I thought that was very excellent and worth pointing out. But before we bring in Ashley, we're going to hear from Mike Alibrand. Mike is the president of PSN Labs. And we're going to talk about how PSN has been helping companies deal with an unforeseen danger brought on by COVID-19. Let's listen. I'm here with PSN Labs President Mike Alibrand. Mike, we talk about COVID revealing cracks in our healthcare system and other larger issues, but PSN is working more with actual cracks, environmental stress cracking that we're seeing. Tell us a bit about what COVID has revealed in the materials that we're using for medical devices.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. I'd be happy to do that. So I think it's important to understand when we talk about environmental stress cracking in the medical device is to understand that the number 1 material used in that space is polycarbonate. And among the subject matter experts in the industry, we like to coin the phrase polycrack-a-lot because it's been giving job security for many of us for many years. But polycarbonate has long been one of the most common materials used in the medical space for a variety of reasons. One is extremely heat resistant, so it can survive various sterilization processes like autoclave better than other polymer materials. 2, it shrinks low. So because of that, it has much tighter tolerances. So if you're designing and developing multi-component medical devices, you'd love a material that doesn't really shrink a whole lot and allows you to achieve those tight tolerances. 3, it's clear and very impact resistant. So if you're dropping this device from a height of 3 or so feet, your likelihood of surviving that impact is good. However, as I mentioned, polycarbonate's Achilles heel is it has relatively poor chemical resistance. So if it's subjected to a variety of chemical cleaners or soaps or greases, things of those natures, it's going to crack. That has become more prevalent in this COVID age because everything is being cleaned that much more. And whether or not the cracks produce are really a function of the base material, the design, and how it's processed. So you can successfully use these materials in a wide array of industries and subject them to chemicals, but you better make sure that those designs are such that your stresses are minimized when you go to make your assembly of your complex medical devices. PSN is able to support our clients in understanding what the limitation of those designs are, understanding the proper material selection process, and then developing a robust solution to be able to develop this medical device that survives the intended application.
For more information, go to pcnlabs.com. Well, Ashley McEvoy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
It's my pleasure. We normally start off the podcast asking about backgrounds, but just before I push start, we were talking COVID, and I want to talk COVID for just a second on a kind of personal level. I've been listening to your presentations, and you've always been very mindful and appreciative of the healthcare professionals. So I know you're following this on a human level. And I got to ask, I mean, what's it like to have your company's name brought up as one of these bringers of hope, of vaccines? We're going to have our vaccines to the general population. It just was announced today, April 19th in Massachusetts. So it gives you a lift, and it's really a hopeful thing. What's it like to be part of that story, even though it's not part of your business?
Well, thanks, Tom, first of all, for having me. And listen, I would say COVID has humbled the world.
Yeah.
And we are in healthcare is a very humble and very honorable market, as we all know. And I think if anything in COVID, it humbled the world and it put healthcare front and center on everybody's radar screen. And, J&J is the largest healthcare company. So we kind of just do what we know, what we've been trained to do, which is to go serve. And I do give a huge acknowledgement because our healthcare workers have brought unbelievable inspiration, not just treating COVID patients, but also treating non-COVID patients. But I've also just been unbelievably inspired by our J&Jers who just really, had the patient in the middle and customers front and center. And we like to say we have this unique opportunity of being a convener of care. And that's J&J on its best day. And the vaccine is one example of breaking down all kinds of barriers and doing the unthinkable and unimaginable timelines, always having safety front and center, always having patient care front and center, but bringing global leaders together, bringing in partners and competitors to help solve a world problem. And, there's 7 billion people on the planet who need to be taken care of, and we all need to do our part.
That's great, and again, it must be wonderful to hear your company listed amongst those bringing relief. Well, let's switch back to my regular mode. I'm dying to know what your entry into medtech was, because you have one of those LinkedIn profiles that start just at your time with J&J. What was your first job in medtech?
It was actually in J&J. So I kind of started, I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and my father had worked for Campbell Soup Company for 25 years. So I grew up as a Campbell Soup kid, listening to global leaders. He was in innovation and insights and analytics, and he had people always all around the dinner table from all around the world. And you would go to Mexico and India and food science. So I kind of got very interested into human behavior and why do people do what they do. He actually went to Penn undergrad. And so I would go to homecomings of Penn, and I played field hockey and lacrosse there. So I got a little bit of the understanding of being on a team and doing your part and finding a way to contribute, and then parlayed that into really the service industry. Started in advertising in New York City and moved to Europe for a while and got some, hands-on experience with the likes of a Procter & Gamble and a Unilever. Got to see an American company and an Anglo-Dutch company and how they do that. Mm-hmm. And then ventured into this little company called J&J 25 years ago, Tom. And, there is no one J&J. I was always interested in the sciences. For me, J&J, I care about impact and making a difference. And healthcare is just this huge sandbox of being able to help people all around the world. And I love the global nature of the business. I love the science and the technology. I love the Crater, the moral compass. I tried it on. It fit like a glove. Not many companies let you run 5 different companies through 25 years and have 5 kids. So it's a pretty special place.
That's fantastic. Well, let's talk a bit about J&J, and let's switch back a little bit to the past year. Internally, when did it become evident? I mean, you have plants in, I think, Wuhan, at least in China, so you probably got some early indicators of things that were happening. But when did it become apparent to you that this is something that is going to really change our lives?
Well, you know what? We're in the middle of March right now, January last year. So we've been at this for, more than 14 months.
Yeah.
I remember vividly that first call in the middle of January. We have a very strong history in China. I'll tell you, we've been there for over 35 years. We have 11,000 colleagues there. We have 9 plants in China. So we've been in China for a very long time. And we have a very strong footprint and a very strong reputation there. So they, quite frankly, they were the first on the ground in the Wuhan hospital ascertaining what's going on here. So we started our crises management team meetings in January, and then quickly we started ascertaining, this thing is going global fast, because then it went to Italy. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, this is the advantage, I think, of healthcare, of convenience of care. I remember a lot of the doctors in Wuhan started to see patients who had COVID and afterwards were presenting with heart arrhythmias. And so we connected a lot of our electrophysiologists. We're the world leader in electrophysiology, actually in Milan in Italy. And
Wow.
Then we started to convene that kind of community of care to understand this. And all of a sudden, papers started, but it started to help really change the standard of care for COVID management. And that led to a whole host of other, new ways that we could connect the community of clinicians to understand what's going on with COVID patients and the science and treatment protocols, but equally stand up care for non-COVID patients, particularly in oncology and metabolics and diabetes, and how to do so in a very safe and responsible manner.
What was the impact on internally on your businesses and on your employees? What sort of cuts or changes did you have to make?
We had a really simple, first of all, listen, 2020 was an unbelievably historic year, right? From a health and economic, a racial and social injustice point of view, I think everyone was tested. And I couldn't be more proud of how everybody kind of rose to the occasion to put the patient and the customer in the middle. We call it like chairs facing outwards, and really figure out new ways of engaging and offering value. And it started with, we say number one is crisis management. How are we standing up hospitals from J&J about getting PPE and getting emergency use ventilators and getting all of the right protective gear so that people were in essence protected? How were our sales and clinical reps protected? How did we stand up, education and keep education going? We did a partnership with a company called Advances in Surgery. And Tom, it was amazing. We had over the year, 6 million healthcare professionals join this virtual platform where they learned, all the protocols of COVID-19 and how to, manage from a labor management to protocols to clinical care. And then as the year went on, how do you manage non-COVID patients at the same time so that we are, in essence, getting people back into the funnel and getting them back to the care that they're deserving. And then obviously, patient sentiment, starts to weigh in, and reassuring patients and doing your health can't wait campaign. So, I really feel like many other colleagues in medtech, the J&Jers kind of went to go in service of solving all the problems during the middle of the pandemic while keeping our customer service. We never missed a beat of preparing to say yes to the products and services that our customer needed. And our supply chain colleagues, I give a huge shout out to them. Many of them obviously in our plants 24/7 around the world. And then also conducting innovation. What was remarkable is everybody had to figure out how to continue to do clinical trials and how to continue to progress innovation programs. And, we figured it out using technology to keep meeting those deliverables. So I think we all just came away with just an unbelievable sense of ingenuity and resilience, and couldn't be more grateful for that.
And what were the challenges of working internally? I imagine you went remote. A lot of people were not in the offices, or did people continue to go into the office? What was the life like at J&J under all of this?
Yeah, no, I think, like at everybody, we kind of pivoted fast. We've always had still 40%, of our workforce either calling on hospitals or in R&D labs or in manufacturing. So it was really about 60% of the workforce that had to pivot to doing work remotely. And thank goodness for Zoom and Blue Jeans and all the different platforms. I think it's a good thing. I think, well, now there's probably a bit of Zoom fatigue. I think that there will be new normals of integrating live conversations and tapping in people from around the world. And I think it really democratizes power. I think it can create a more inclusive environment. I think it's a heck of a lot more efficient than going overseas for a one-day trip. We're not doing that anymore. But, I would say, we believe we're not going to be all virtual. We're not going to be all live. We really are going to be living in this kind of hybrid world for the new normal.
I thought your Investor Day presentation that you released in October, November, where you went over your digital surgery platform was very sharp. Actually, totally geeked out on it. I enjoyed watching it, and I thought it was really well done. What do you hope post-COVID will look like in terms of recovery? I saw in that presentation you talked about, I think it was you, but someone had mentioned that surgeries or procedures that previously took 2 hours may now be taking 4 or 5 hours because the patients are just that much sicker. What kind of bolus are we looking at as we work through COVID and our healthcare system gets back to the regular pace or close enough to the regular pace that it had been on before?
Yeah, I think, big picture, the med tech industry is, they're pretty healthy markets. There's unfortunately a lot of unmet need still existing. And I think technology's really caught up with a lot of that unmet need. And, when I look at the end state markets, I think consistent with the industry, we're pretty bullish of where we're going to be going in the future. And I'm just consistent to say it's not a linear line. It's a bumpy line. You take 3 steps forward, 1 step back. And we knew that there would be multiple waves. And depending upon where you are in the world, you're living a very different experience. Right now, China is fully back. J&J grew 7% last year in China. We're going to have a healthy double-digit growth there. Asia was very close to being flat last year. So Asia's coming back and leading the way for us and leading the way with a lot of different new business models as well. Europe is very sluggish. It's going through a lot of hard times right now, particularly in Italy, particularly in India. And so I think it's going to be a slow dig out throughout the year. I do think they'll come back. There's been a significant amount of healthcare investment from many of the governments. And depending upon where you are, there are certain vaccination efforts that are really picking up nicely. I think the U.S. was slow in the beginning and now picking up. So, we experienced a dip in December, in January. You'll hear us talk about that in Q1. So I think everybody's like Q1 would be a little bit more sluggish than we had originally anticipated, given some of the research. But given the economics and quite frankly, the maturation of the hospital systems, understanding how to stand back up non-COVID care, I expect that will come back in Q2, Q3, and Q4. And as we know, Brazil right now is like in a world of hurt. So to answer your question, there is no one answer. I think 2021 is going to be very bumpy, but I'm very hopeful for 2022 and beyond.
Great. Well, we'll continue to steer towards some positive topics. Let's talk about digital surgery. Once again, the presentation that's available online that you gave in the fall focused largely on your digital surgery platform, which looks really, really impressive. Your 3 different systems. Where are we? I guess I've been following, obviously, robotic surgery since it came out. I was surprised that it only accounts for anywhere in a single digit to 10% of the business. I would have thought there was more traction there. So that there really is a wide open field. But I'm trying to get a sense as to where digital surgery will fit into Johnson & Johnson going forward. I used to think it was one of the branches on a tree, the robot. But now with the way you were presenting it really seems to be part of the trunk, and everything's going to kind of branch out of a digital surgery system. Is that how you see it? What role is digital surgery going to play for J&J going forward?
Yeah, Tom, I think quite frankly, medtech has been a little bit of a laggard relative to other industries on how digital has really changed how care is delivered, really end to end. And I think COVID's really accelerating a lot of that. As it relates specifically to our digital surgery programs, I say the following. We were not the first in, similar to laparoscopic surgery. We were not first in. So huge respect for some of the pioneers, but we do enjoy market leadership right now in surgery. And so we're going to have a differentiated value proposition, doing so in a broad-based healthcare J&J fashion, not just like a standalone med tech company.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I mean by that? We really kind of go to like the unmet needs, and we are very focused on reducing the variation in surgical procedures to improve patient care at a reduced cost. And that could be in orthopedics, that could be in cataract surgery, or that could be in bariatric surgery or prostate cancer, or colorectal surgery. And it's taken us a while, but I have to tell you, I feel like we have a very, very competitive team of experts working on this. Really, as I mentioned, it's multi-platform,
Mm-hmm.
so it's beyond one. Dr. Fred Moll, who was one of the founders of Intuitive, has joined Johnson & Johnson through the acquisition of Auris. It's great to have, a visionary, and this is not his first rodeo. He's been around the block and back, but you couple him with, quite frankly, we've Dr. Peter Schulam, who just joined from Yale and was a robotic surgeon, and his clinical experience, and then some of our world-class engineers and all of that Ethicon expertise over 100 years on instrumentation. And you kind of put those folks in a room, and our mission is to really change how procedures are done and create new procedures. Mm-hmm. Now, the adoption curve, as you mentioned, is low, but in addition to the robot, I think what's equally important, I say, it's really about a system solve. And when you look at a lot of the unmet needs that surgeons have and hospital systems have, you hear common themes like, if you're a surgeon, how can I learn faster and skill up my learning curve faster? Or 2, how can I really understand patient anatomy real live time and stay away from critical structures, do no harm, Hippocratic Oath? 3, how do I make sure that I have the most efficient operating room, so I have good continuity and sustainability of business practice? And, that's where we started to kind of convene a whole market basket, if you will, of applications. And you heard about like CSATs is a kind of a crowdsourcing application. We've done over 7.5 million procedures where you in essence, if you're a surgeon in the middle of Indiana, you can tap into and say, how did your case rack and stack versus the world's expert? Mm-hmm. And you can invite their critique, if you will. That's about learning. We have an app called Visible Patient, which gives you real live time 3D picture of the anatomy. And so these complement, if you will, the robotic system and the instrumentation so that procedure variation is more tight and we get more predictable outcomes.
It's an interesting time because, as we mentioned, Intuitive came out with Da Vinci over 20 years ago. Stryker bought Mako 6 years ago. Now you've got your 3 systems, Velis, Ottava, and Monarch, that are coming out. Monarch's already out. Ottava is going to come out next year. Velis is out, or at least a portion of it. We've moved away from this is just a frill that we don't need. It's just a robot. We could do the surgery without it too. This is really a critical part of the procedure. So what happened now? What allowed J&J to get involved with this now?
Yeah, I would say, listen, we learned from some of the first folks and surgery is a slow adoption business. There were a lot of folks given the first generation value proposition wasn't as attractive. And so, I think that we started to listen to broader segments of the community around the world and said, we actually think we can do so and change how care is delivered in a meaningful fashion that takes advantage of how we, our world leadership in open surgery, which is 50% of cases still, and minimally invasive. And, we see a world, Tom, where it's not just a pure robotic play, that there's going to be a hybrid procedure of minimally invasive laparoscopic offerings combined with robotic offerings. And, we're very fortunate to have the combination of a Monarch platform, which has several indications to come, mm-hmm. as well as Ottava. And we actually see the two coming together to solve big things in addition to lung cancer that I've talked about with Monarch, but also kidney cancer and bladder cancer. And, these are really about intercepting the disease earlier to get much better outcomes for patients.
Yeah, no, and I think the Monarch presentation was really exciting about the work with lung cancer and in pulmonology. It's an area that desperately needs innovation. I wondered how will this change how surgical devices are sold, because it almost seems as if once you get this is almost becoming like an iPhone versus Droid sort of play. If you can get a system that really prefers using a J&J digital surgery procedure because of whatever reason, the interface or the 8 arms in Ontava, and they're sort of accustomed to that platform, then you sell the surgical supplies into that platform. Is this changing the way that you'll sell devices? Like you really need to plant a flag with that technology platform first, and then the sales of surgical supplies will sort of follow?
I'd say that that's really under construction. We very much have like procedural innovation at the forefront, and how can we really innovate how procedures are done, again, for consistency, to reduce the variability in how that procedure is done, improve outcomes at a lower cost. And that's our mission. And so, and there's going to be different archetypes of business models around the world. Europe, the UK is different than how, Brazil operates. So, and we're very much a global company. And so, I think that there's going to be elements of where service is going to play a big piece. I think there's going to be a lot of elements of understanding jointly with transparency to data on both fronts, from the hospital system to the surgeon to the robotic system, to make it a smarter procedure as we go. I think that is going to be the new normal in medtech, is the use of data and understanding how we get smarter over time, and not having dumb devices, but having smarter devices and having smart implants. And, we're seeing that a lot on, we're obviously big in the implant business, and how do we make those implants smarter with mini sensors, or catheters right now, given the sophistication, quite frankly, of technology, have gotten much smaller and much smarter, much more flexible, much more affordable, that can access very, very distal parts of your body that used to be very inaccessible to many surgeons up until now. So we're encouraged with how these advancements are going to change, quite frankly, patient care.
Interesting. No, it's exciting times. I'd like to focus now on innovation a bit. You brought it up in the call. I think it was stated that you, since 2017, J&J had $10 billion in acquisitions and collaboration. So you're kind of the New York Yankees. You have the payroll. You can buy the talent, but you're also have always been so innovation focused with your many centers across the world. You're really kind of a validator for a lot of startups out there to get involved with one of your programs. Is something that they're very rightly crow about. How do you use that connection with the innovation ecosystem? Do you see it as a feeder system for J&J? Do you just want to support innovation generally in medtech and just make sure that new ideas keep rising? How do you look at innovation from your perspective?
Yeah, I'd offer two things, Tom. I mean, J&J MedTech, we were the first to do. Johnson & Johnson Development Corps was one of the oldest, equity investors in medtech. We were one of the pioneering founders of that. And that's been a big source of starting up companies, investing in companies early on, joining their boards, nurturing those, kernels of innovation along their journey. That really is the ecosystem of medtech and remains to be today. A lot of those are going public sooner than what we're used to. Usually, we've got first in human and they're more advanced, but, in today's capital market, debt is cheap and it's remarkable, the valuations in medtech. It's remarkable to say. But I would tell you, we also just look, quite frankly, we're agnostic to where we get it from. And I think J&J, you heard us about our innovation centers and JLab and our Johnson & Johnson Development Corps. And really what we've had to do over the years is just ensure that our internal innovation colleague are incented to go really seek the absolute best labs in the world. And they're there now. They seamlessly will look at a program and say, if I'm a year away and there's someone in Israel who can get me there a year faster, I'm going to pause my internal program and go partner with Israel. So I really feel like it's in the culture. And similarly, we really have an agnostic way to how to go solve a problem. Like lung cancer is an example. It's not just a drug. It's not just a device. It's not just a consumer smoking cessation, behavior modification program. It really is looking at etiology of the disease and figuring out how can we disrupt that disease earlier, really through an end-to-end prevention, early diagnostics and treatment, minimally invasive treatment, locally delivered treatment that's not systemic, to just go change outcomes.
Mm-hmm. What's your estimation of the current landscape of innovation in medtech? Are you seeing as many good ideas and new companies coming up and about as we did previously?
Listen, I do. I think, I think I'm encouraged with a lot of the progression in orthopedics, which is typically a slow moving industry, if you will, of their migration to, digital and infection management soon to come and smart implants. And I think of the world of surgery around making sure that we're getting the right evidence to, reduce adverse events. If you look at kind of our energy and endomechanical, everything has differentiated evidence to reduce leaks, reduce bleeding time, reduce infection rates, but also pivoting to, I would say, the future of combination robotic with endoluminal surgery. Electrophysiology, quite frankly, was a pioneer, a 25 plus year old company that still grows double digit. They were the first to go in and minimally invasive and ablate lesions on the heart. And there's a lot of application of that to lung and to other parts of the anatomy. And then I like to say in vision and, cataract surgery was one of the first with the femtosecond laser to actually do robotic surgery. We don't talk a lot about that, but in eye health, the femtosecond laser doing the capsulotomy was one of the first to use, in essence, a laser beam to do an automatic capsulotomy. So I do feel encouraged with how care can get changed using some good old fashioned medtech implants and tools with really changing how the procedure gets done for more predictability.
You nice segue into my next topic, which was vision, was where we initially met when we used to work in an ophthalmology meeting, and you were the head of the vision group. This is I think you've just made reference of it in this call once. You said that you're working on a contact lens that would be a drug delivery system for allergy medicine. I don't know if you referenced it again in the rest. I didn't hear if it was referenced later on, but that just sounded amazingly cool. What do you see happening in the vision space in terms of innovation? I'd like to just understand where that business is going a bit, because it's actually a sizable part of what's going on in your MedTech group now.
I think that there's a lot of unmet need in eye health. You and I talked about this in our ophthalmology Congress chats, but there's huge amount of unmet need. People really value their sense of sight. The technology has gotten a heck of a lot better. Treating cataracts is the number one cause of preventable blindness. And we kind of play along the spectrum from early on with children, and it's not just in Asia, but really slowing down the progression of myopia so that you don't get a retinal detachment and you don't go blind. We've got an active program on that. We just got FDA breakthrough designation on that. To the notion of when you're in your teens and you start to get myopia, how do you get introduced to, contact lenses? It's a self-esteem business. Beauty is a big entree into that for teens, to get to them to be compliant, and to get them to be hygienic. That's why we like daily disposable lens. And then you just go along the need spectrum of, dry eye and presbyopia. My goodness, with zoomopia, dry eye is going through the roof. We have, offerings of dry eye, to the notion of presbyopia and cataract. And our colleagues in Janssen are actively working on a program in the back of the eye with retina in partnership with our vision colleagues. So, we really look at the patient spectrum cradle to grave and think that there's a lot of unmet need. And again, I think J&J can help solve these problems, not just as a standalone med tech, but really as a healthcare company.
I hadn't heard the term zoomopia before. Is that an actual medical condition now?
You'll have to go look at it. It's called a lot of dry eye for people. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Great. That's something else we need to focus on. No pun intended. But the drug-eluting contact lens, I don't know, it just reminded me of, again, when I was more involved with ophthalmology, where Google was working on a glucose censoring lens. There just seemed to be a lot of promise in that. I'm curious, how do we saw Google work on that, and that didn't work out so well. Google was involved with the Verb project, which now is part of your platform. But how does that whole interaction with the tech industry, how has that worked out so far? Do you think for MedTech? Do you think we'll see more of that in the future, where the tech companies are coming in and trying to improve the tech that we have, or are you demonstrating that companies like Johnson & Johnson have this under control and we're going to keep carrying it forward?
Well, I view it very much of like an open collaborative partnership. I don't think tech alone can do it, and I don't think more traditional healthcare can do it. I think we have a huge amount of partnerships all around the world. Again, in China with local China tech companies, in the U.S. with Microsoft, with Verily, with Cisco. We we have partnerships with many of the tech companies. And, you know, in addition to the product development, they're helping us evolve some of our business models. You know, you mentioned a little bit around in eye health as an example. You know, we've used a lot of some of those partnerships to change, to create some really novel therapies. You know, we had the first light adaptive contact lens that, you know, transitions to outside, you know, to a different color using the historic transitions technology. And then we partnered with some tech companies to get a very distinct app that allows people to know, you know, what does it need to be inside versus when you're outside. You know, we just got approval soon to be shared around, you know, our allergy lens, and using, you know, some partnerships with tech companies to understand, you know, the state of allergies and how does that relate to eye health, and how do you have a tool that is available to you to monitor your own personal eye health during allergy season. So I think it's just a beautiful partnership.
Mm-hmm. Great. And last question, I'll let you go. I was just wondering, looking ahead, we talked earlier about Johnson & Johnson's global reach. I wonder if you're putting something in place to sort of maybe predict any future pandemics we may have or any future global threats. You're just in a great position to sort of be keeping an eye on the ball. How do you move forward in this sort of post-pandemic world at Johnson & Johnson?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is healthcare really matters. I think everyone has been sensitized to that. I think there's a renewed interest in protecting healthcare for patients around the world. I think governments on their prioritization has risen higher up in that, and there's a lot more investment in that. I do think while there's a lot of protectivism going on right now around the world, you know, we're kind of on our best when we do have global collaboration, and there is free flow of goods around the world. We have global supply chains. And, you know, we are in the business of, you know, infectious diseases. As you know, we have a history of vaccinations from, you know, what we've done on Ebola and Zika and our work in infectious disease on HIV. So we parlayed that over many, many years. That expertise is really what gave us speed to deliver the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And it's really that internal expertise and external expertise. And I think that you're going to continue to see, you know, a renewed focus on public health. J&J has been part of that public health agenda for many, many years, whether it be infectious disease or maternal health or mental health. And I think that that is much better appreciated in today's environment. And at the same time, I think patients are going to be much more engaged in their own health and well-being. But then I go to kind of lifestyle and how people are going to live lifestyle and the quality of life and the choices they're going to make about the jobs they're going to do, how they're going to work and where they're going to work. And it really has a transformative approach on all the aspects of human life.
Excellent. Well, it's great thoughts and some great stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing how the digital surgery platforms roll out. And I'm really grateful for the time you took to be on the podcast today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Stay safe, get your vaccine, and we will get through this. Thank you kindly.
All right, Chris Newmarker, before we start karaoke as part of our 50th celebration, let's give that social media information. Go.
You can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker. I'm also on Twitter at Newmarker. We're doing some Clubhouse. We'll be back 11 o'clock Eastern time.
11:30 Eastern.
11:30
Eastern time.
Sorry.
Yes.
I would have showed up early and been like, no one's here. I'm all alone. No one wants to hang out with me. So great. 11:30 Eastern time next Monday. You can hang out with me and Tom and give us story tips. You know, tell us what we're doing right. We're cool. Find out what we need to improve on. You know, like it'll be fun.
We had a nice time actually on Monday. I thought it was an interesting conversation about
nice gathering.
About we do obviously talk a lot about the business of tech and all the cool new stuff that's coming in. But one thing we don't really ask about is the affordability and how can this technology that's being created help everyone. So
that became a big subject, and you know that's true. Yeah. I mean, as you said during that discussion, there's so many cool things that we write about, but you know, it kind of doesn't. Is it going to really make a difference if it isn't going to reimburse if people can't afford it?
So it's certainly something we need to be mindful of going forward. So yes, join us on Clubhouse at 11:30 a.m. on Monday. Chris and I will be there. We'll invite some friends from the medtech industry and we'll just rap. We'll talk. We'll have some coffee and we'll talk. You can find me on Clubhouse at MedTechTom. You can find me on Twitter at MedTechTom. You can find me on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi, and it would be great to connect with you all. Now, if you are So that is a wrap of this episode, our 50th episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. Let's take this moment to thank you all for listening. We've had over 60,000 pushes of play, so it's great to be reaching so many people in so many ears. We hear a lot of great comments from folks, and really grateful. So keep listening, keep the nice comments coming. And please do subscribe to this podcast. We don't always get to post it on Mass Device or social media until a couple of days after it comes out. So you can be amongst the hundreds of people who are subscribed and listen to it first thing when it comes out Friday evening and Saturday morning. So really does help you to subscribe so you can get this sooner. And if you like what you hear, please do share it on social media. Put us up there on LinkedIn, put us up there on Twitter, and connect to Chris and I. We just gave you our tags. We'd love to be part of that conversation.
50.
All right, now before Chris and I begin our MedTech karaoke session, want to bid you adieu. Thank you for listening, and tune in next week. We'll have another great episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast waiting for you.
Wasting away my days in Margaritaville.